Season 1 has completed, and we are now right up to Season 2 in the LGAHL for PSN. Hi, everyone. It is T. Sibbs, and joining me today for our first show, the AHL show here, is Vihai and Maranaconda. You might know Vihai as the AGM of the Bears and Maranaconda as the general manager of the Bears. I am also on the Bears. This is not going to be a Bears show, so don't worry about it. It's going to be a show just about the AHL for LG. So thanks for tuning in. We got a lot to talk about with Season 1 and with upcoming Season 2. Just want to welcome Vihai and Maranaconda to the show. How you guys doing today?
Fantastic, Sibbs. Doing great. Looking forward to Season 2 here. A lot of new good players on the horizon here, and a lot of new general managers in place, and I think we're in store for a great season here.
Absolutely. I can't wait for this. Last year was definitely something different for me, never playing in a league like this before, and I really can't wait to talk about it.
Well, let's get right to Season 1. The first time I've ever done anything like this, I found out late last year about several different leagues that were out there. I'd been playing drop-in games like everybody else on NHL 16. Found out about these leagues, signed up after the draft, and so I was assigned to the Bears last year. But it was fun, and we'll talk about the draft. It was fun watching the draft this year, but from what I expected as a player, the kind of camaraderie, the league structure, how everything was planned out pretty well, I was much better than I thought it was going to be, and I got to believe that's probably what a lot of players wound up seeing last season. They joined this league, they figure, I'll probably play a bunch of games and whatever, but it wasn't just about playing games, it was about the community, it was about a damn good website that Trish, has put together and started, and has a lot of other guys now who help him maintain it. I think all in all, it was just a great experience for someone like myself who just started doing gaming online like this.
I would have to say absolutely. Last year was the first year that I was involved in any kind of management in any leagues, and I was playing in a different league, and found out about this league and was offered a job from a friend of mine. And, I thought it would be a fantastic idea. I was like, you know what, that sounds great. I think that, it would be fun. The whole concept of having a 17-man roster and having to build a true team really appealed to me personally. And, I very much found it far more enjoyable building that team and not just having one line that played 90% of the games in a week, so you really get that team atmosphere over here at the LG, and it's far better than any other league I've ever been a part of. And to jump right in on the ground floor and be part of management was a fantastic experience, one that I absolutely enjoyed, and that's why I'm absolutely back for another season to do it again here in the AHL. I've found it to be very rewarding to get a group of guys together and get them on the same page and moving in one direction. So that's definitely something about this league that I absolutely enjoy.
Yeah, I'd have to say I didn't know what to expect coming into the league last year. Maranaconda, you and I had talked for a long time about getting into a league together, and last year it just kind of worked out where we could do it. And I really found out that when you have especially with a website like LG that puts a group of guys together, a large group of guys, over 1,000 people in Season 1, and you try and mesh different personalities and figure out what kind of play your team is going to try and carry throughout an 82-game season, it's something really interesting to kind of see unfold as it goes through the season. I mean, I think that one of the biggest things last year for me was that the competition level compared to I've been playing NHL for, 15 years at least. I started with NHL 95, but really started playing it every year in NHL 99. And the competition level in this league is greater than any competition I've ever seen play in this game.
Well, it's interesting because again, we know a lot of these guys. We've played with a lot of them in dropping games, and so you know what kind of talent there is individually when you do that kind of game, right? But w- with LG and playing with a bunch of guys maybe that you don't know, with guys that you don't play with all the time, that takes away that comfort zone that everybody has in drop in, where I'm going to go in, drop in, I'm going to do what I do, and hopefully everybody else meshes with me. And, maybe one out of every 10 or 15 games that actually happens. But in LG, and in this kind of league, you've got to work towards making a team, don't you?
I would say absolutely. You have to very much surrender to the flow. You have to work with your teammates and you have to learn different play styles. It's the only way you're going to be successful. I mean, you have a lot of guys who do play the drop-ins, but then you also have club. And in club, you have specific groups of guys. They may or may not have had that club together for, 5 years. It could be the same core group of guys playing in club, and they're used to each other. They know where each other's going to be on the ice. They know everything about one another. Now, you take those guys who are on that team in club and you put them into LG, now all of a sudden those 5 guys are on 5 different teams. And they're having to take their play style and mesh it with another group of guys, and sometimes it doesn't work right out of the gates. Sometimes they struggle, but the good players, and this league is full of them, always have a tendency to mesh with whoever they're chameleon players. That you can put them basically with anybody, and over a very small amount of time, their game starts to improve and they really start to mesh with those other players. That's the beauty about this league, I think.
Well, Jonathan, I think I think we've all seen that we have played with a lot of guys who are maybe the top scorers in these dropping games. If you look at their stats, but they cannot play in these leagues because they're so individual. Heck, I've even seen a couple of them who did try and play who have been suspended from the league because of how they play in here. So I think we've all realized, and you could talk to this, how this really is, you got to sacrifice your own game and learn how to play as a unit.
Oh yeah. I learned last year. I play a certain style, and Mike and I, Maranaconda, we've been playing for years together. I mean, playing late nights when I was just a teenager, like a 13-year-old kid, 12-year-old kid playing till 4 in the morning. We established a chemistry years ago, but then you take us and put us on a line with another guy that we either ran training camps with or called up from the training camp or that we bid on. Everybody's got a different style, and a lot of that has to do with how widespread this league is, with people being from across Canada and the U.S. and different countries and cities. It's really something that you need to learn quick, is how to mesh your playing styles together, because you may have chemistry with this guy over here, but the way you're going to get this team that you're on to be successful is to have chemistry throughout all 6 guys that are on the ice at that particular time.
Right. Let's try and talk to a few more items on season one before we head to season two. We talked about this offline. 1,000+ signups for season one, uh, which is amazing. They had to open up the AHL, which I don't think was the initial plan. Um, Training camps were made up of 50+ players, but wound up being a treasure trove for the GMs and AGMs if you knew where to look for it. Let's talk a little bit about those two, about how many people signed up, and then what that meant for the training camps for you guys, the GMs and the AGMs.
Well, you know, to start off the season last year, and I'm sure it was this way for quite a few GMs, I had maybe a handful of guys that I knew in this league out of, 1,000 players. So, we had initially gone out and did some scouting, what we thought was scouting at the time, because we were so new to it. And we got a group of guys on the team, and, and the more we played with them, the more, we found out certain things did or didn't work. And then I dove into that training camp roster last year, and I'll tell you, that it is full of gems. There are players that just may or may not know the right people. They may never have been in a league like this before. They may be brand new to it. I mean, for example, Sibs here was assigned to our training camp last year. We didn't know anything about him, and it came time to where we needed a goaltender, and he was always available for us, and he was always reaching out and talking to us, and he came up and made the team, and he's been on the roster ever since. Our roster last year, with the original 17 players that we started with, I think we only had 4 of those players left on our roster by the end of the season, which got us in a little bit of hot water. Got us in hot water with our NHL team because, at the time we didn't realize that we were filling our roster out with a bunch of prospects that they could not call up if they ever needed to call up a player full time. But we worked that out, as our owners are fantastic. They're great guys, and they do a great job up in Washington. And but those training camp rosters are very, very, very important. Those are the glue players that hold this league together in my eyes.
Hey, Jonathan, talk to that point where we, Mike was just talking about it, but we see this on message boards all the time. We see guys, hoping to have somebody find them, all this stuff. Talk about what the training camp player really needs to do to make themselves visible to their owners and to the AGMs and to be part of the team.
Well, that's a great point. Last year I saw several people on the training camp that Maranaconda and I had not run any games with, that the day, whether it was from a trade or at the beginning of the season, that the day they got to this team, they immediately started contacting us saying, when can I play? They started signing up for games. What can I do? I want to be a part of this team, or how can I get myself out there so you can see how I play? And I think that's really important, is even though you're on the training camp and there's a GM that's in charge of the team that you're on, the best way to get yourself up on that roster and playing in this league is to be persistent and talk to your GM and just say, hey, man, whenever you have time, I want to jump in some games with you, because the easiest way to get on the roster, if you think you deserve to be there, which most guys do, is being persistent with getting information from yourself to the team about your willingness to be a team player and how you can play. I think that we saw that with you as a good example last year. You started contacting us as soon as you were assigned to us, and I went and ran some games with you and talked to Mike, and we immediately started seeing what we had on the rest of the training camp after that. And eventually, within the first week or so, you were up on the roster. So for training camp guys, I would say the biggest thing is you can't just sit on the training camp and expect that you're going to be called up. People do not know you. Like we said, last year, there was over 1,000 people, and there's no way we could possibly know them all. So, and with this year being over 2,000, you have to put yourself out there. You have to contact your GM and try and get yourself in some drop-in games with them and run with the team so they can see how you are.
If I could just piggyback on that, I would absolutely say communication. It's all about communicating with the management team, and not only the management team, sending friend requests out to other roster players on the team. And it's not, you see it a lot across the league and on the shout boxes. You see these guys that just say, I'm the best player in the league, and I'm this and I'm that. And that's not what you want to hear as a GM. You want guys to contact you, absolutely. Availability, let them know when you're available. Hey, if you ever need an emergency call up, hit me up, I'm your guy. And get together with them and play some games. It's all about the communication and doing it in the proper way and not making demands to your GMs.
Right.
That's how you get on a team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, and I do have one more point on that. When you're contacting the GM to play those games and tell them that you're available, other things that can help you get your foot in the door are contacting other guys on the team that you go look at the roster and send friend requests to guys that play your position that could possibly be your partners, or guys, if you're a defenseman, send them to the forwards. Try and get in games with players on the team, because players on the team will also tell their GM, hey, this guy's good, you should give him a look.
Right. Well, we talked about how things shaped up last year as far as the start of the season, but well, I tell you what, the way the season ran and how it ended up in the AHL was, to me, incredibly shocking. I mean, look, the Hartford Wolfpack, we played them several times early in the season, and I think preseason as well. Good team.
Many battles.
Yeah, good team, but not necessarily a team I thought was going to win it all. And yet they managed to put it all together at the end, and shocked me. And I gotta believe, you guys, Miranda Kondo, I gotta believe you didn't necessarily see that coming either.
Oh, it goes back to the old adage: when the playoffs start, the right team gets hot at the right time, they could take it all the way and take that championship, and that's exactly what the Wolfpack did. They owned every team that they played in the playoffs. They went out and took that cup last season, and it was a fantastic thing to watch.
Absolutely. Their first round playoff matchup was against the Providence Bruins, who by all accounts were a heavy favorite heading into the playoffs, and they took them to 7 games. And once they won that game 7, you saw that team take off. They had a world of confidence, and they took it all the way to the cup.
Yeah, and they tore through the Penguins a lot more than I certainly would have expected. I thought that would be a lot closer, probably a game 7 situation, but like you said, they just kind of manned up, and they got great contribution from everybody. It just seemed like everybody, including their goaltending, was just spot on. They absolutely came together as a team and just played a good, solid game. If you watched any of those games, the way that they possessed the ice in all sections. Mike likes to make drawings, and he's the Madden of VGAHL. So he looks at all the different sections of the ice. And Mike, again, I know you looked at some of these games, you gotta you have to agree with me that Hartford, they didn't let any piece of the ice go to anybody. They controlled all of it.
No, they did not. Their offensive zone possession was fantastic. They moved the puck around very well. They were a fun team to watch. Their goaltending was outstanding down the line there. They got some great goaltending, and they played a smart game. They weren't a fast break. Scoot down the ice as quick as you can, get a shot on net. They possessed the puck. They did the right things with it, and they played well. They caught fire, and it showed. Once they got through that first round, it was on, and the Wolfpack were not letting anybody get in their way.
Yeah, and to that same point, on the Western Conference, the Checkers did the same thing. They started out their playoff run, and they swept the Condors 4-0, and then they beat the heavily favored Chicago Wolves 4-1. So you kind of saw parity on both sides of the league during the playoffs, and teams that got hot at the right time. And that goes to show just how competitive this league was designed to be, where you have to have 3 solid lines, forward and defense, and have 2 goalies that can play, because you cannot play the same guys every single game.
Yeah, and to talk about the other part of this, we saw surprise teams play amazing in the stretch. We saw teams like Providence, the Wolves, the Crunch, Stockton. Obviously, to me early on, I was saying to myself, Stockton, they got to be the team to beat. And yet these teams got to, got to the playoffs, but then for whatever reason just disappeared. And like you were just saying before, having those three strong lines, those three pairings, uh, day in and day out, being of just about equal talent, to me, I think might have been the downfall of those teams.
It very well could have, I think. But then again, hockey is a game of momentum. It always has been, it always will be. So it all really depends. Stockton had a fantastic lineup. Some of the top scoring players in the league, the top scoring players in the league, the best. And it's just that's why the game of hockey is so fantastic. It is a game of bounces, and it's a game of momentum, and it's a game of the right thing at the right time. And that's why we all love this game so much. It's just that anything can happen. And that was a true example of anything could happen last year, watching the Wolfpack get to that cup. But down the stretch, there were also teams like the Bakersfield Condors.
Mm-hmm.
They put together a fantastic end of the season. They were really playing well, along with the Ice Hogs. They were playing fantastic as well. Great hockey down the stretch, but might have ran themselves out of gas. They may have ran out of gas by the time they made it to the playoffs, but they were playing fantastic hockey down the stretch.
Yeah, the Ice Hogs, they swept their first two playoff series. They won 4-0, 4-0 going into round 3, and they came up against that Checkers team that was just on a roll. And you'd think winning 8 straight games in the playoffs that you're on a roll as well, but you're right, they may have exhausted themselves, and that just shows how this league can go. Hockey is a funny sport, and you can look at your schedule for the week and say, well, this may be a game we should win, or this should be a game that'll be tough, or whatever it may be. And you could lose all the games that you think you should win and win all the games against teams that you think might be better than you at that point in time. And that's exactly why we all play, is because we're very competitive and love to see how it unfolds.
Right. Well, I tell you what, I think season 1 obviously a tremendous success, but now we are, as we're recording this on May 1st, we're a few hours away, from the start of the season, of season number 2. Season number 1, a lot of interest, start of the AHL. Season number 2, amazing, almost 2,000 players signing up for this. And so we knew last year that a CHL was going to be needed, but we absolutely have proven that that's the case. League has doubled in size, and we're now just have all our teams together for all 3 leagues. Season 2 is upon us, and again, we're calling this show the LGAHL this week, but for this week, it's a season 2 preview. And let's start with the idea that there is just a tremendous growth in the interest of online leagues like LG, and they have proven that by doubling the audience for the NHL game.
I would agree. The appetite for the online hockey community has been waiting for this on the PlayStation side. The appetite has been there. We've been really clamoring for something like this that we could grab onto, and the way that LG has it set up, their website is fantastic. Once you learn the ins and out of the website, it is brilliant. Tris does a really fantastic job with that, and to me, it really is not a shock, that we have doubled in size. We've doubled in size from the start of the season last year, and we're just coming up on season 2, and we've already got enough players players and signed up to have a CHL, which is fantastic to me. That right there just shows how hungry the PlayStation Network side of things is to have a league like this. The 2,000 players have now signed up for this league. That to me is mind-boggling.
Well, think about this website. 6 months ago, we didn't even know about it. And, back in early to mid-December is when you found out about this opportunity to be with the Hershey Bears. And 5.5 months later, we're going into season 2 in just about 7.5 hours from now. And we've got 2,000 people in less than half of a calendar year. And I think one of the biggest things here, because this season we're seeing a lot of people jumping cross-platform to come over to PlayStation, right, because this is finally here. Yep. I think that there's one of the great things that the league does is having the 3-game limit per week. It involves that many more players on each team, and that in turn makes more people want to sign up and be a part of it. And that's why we have a CHL in season 2 already.
Yeah, I think the guaranteeing of a certain amount of participation in the league is crucial, because it really it makes the GMs obviously have to do more work, but it's a good challenge for them. But it keeps everybody involved, and I think that's huge. And you laugh because it's a challenge, but it can be a hair tearing challenge at times. But I think keeping everybody going in this league and keeping them interested, that could easily fall off if you don't have those kinds of restrictions. And I think they've done a good job in LG to do that.
It definitely is a challenge. I laughed because Mike and I have had long conversations as we've tried to run this Hershey Bears team and finding different players. And these last 2 weeks coming into season 2, even the last 3.5 weeks, I would say, as we were leading into the bidding process and trying to figure out where we were going to be able to pull players from, and then the league makes a huge decision to allow prospects to be bid on in the AHL. All this stuff can, as a GM and for me as an AGM, make your head spin, but it's all totally worth it because we have met some of the coolest people and some really great guys in this process building this team, which Mike can attest to, that this is not an experience that I necessarily ever could have imagined. It's just like, oh, you want to join the league? Sure. And then it turns into this thing where it's like, wow, they've got this together. This is a great website, and it is, is challenging at some times, but it is all competitive and totally fun.
I personally could see this, I mean, look at the growth we've had just in 5 months. I mean, we have doubled in size. I'm excited for the future. I could see, possibly opening up European leagues. Right. We might have that many players that would like to sign up to where we could have every professional hockey league that there is incorporated into this site. And the amount of players that are signing up and the word of mouth, more and more people every day are signing up for this league and just getting their feet wet. I see this going very good places, and I just see nothing but upside to this website and this league moving forward.
It's funny you talk about that because, one of the things we all discussed before going to air with the show was the fact that Xbox has been doing it for 16, 17 seasons now. And they've obviously have done it very successfully.
22, I believe.
22? Wow, okay.
22.
I didn't realize it was that many. And they've got a heck of a league going over there, but this thing is growing very quickly on the PlayStation side, and like you mentioned, a lot of guys are jumping over now and playing on the PlayStation side. Of course, there's a lot of bravado about being Xbox, but a lot of them are coming over here and playing PS.
we're nipping at their heels. We are nipping at their heels. And it's not that it's technically a competition. It's not us and them. It's all one website, and that's fantastic. But I like the fact that we're nipping at their heels. That's great to me. That means that word's spreading, and the competition level is going to do nothing but get greater and greater, and people are going to have to adjust their games. Because look out, here it comes.
Well, I definitely think with the people jumping cross-platform, I don't necessarily think that speaks to the PlayStation or the Xbox itself. I think it just speaks to this website and this structure that this league has installed, that people are willing to jump cross-platform now that this league is available because the website and the league structure is that good.
Well, with that in mind, let's start talking about the players, the bidding process for the AHL, not the process itself, but how it went. We have, if you look at, then what I did was I kind of just looked at the top 10 everyday players, the forwards, the defensemen, top 10 goaltenders. A lot from last season. A lot of these guys have either gone on to the NHL or have taken management positions in the AHL, and so they stay there because of that reason. There's a lot of talent. You talk about guys like Theos or Crazy Marchese. Uh, they were so incredibly good in the AHL last year. They deserve to be called up and be there. So there's a lot of talent that have gone to the NHL, but I feel like even with that being the case, there was still a lot of good talent on the bidding board for the AHL when it came time.
Absolutely. There was tons of good talent left, and I think some of it did flip flop like you were talking about. Some of the guys that were the top tier guys down in the AHL have now made their way up to the NHL, and that to me is fantastic. The parity in this league, the difference between from team to team is not necessarily that great. But it is good to see some of those NH or AHL guys from last year get rewarded and get taken up to the NHL. But that there's whenever somebody leaves the league, there is somebody that has taken that spot and they are ready to go to take that spot. And that is all the new guys that we have coming into the AHL this season. And I think it was a fantastic move on the league's part to allow AHL teams to bid on prospects,
Right.
just because I feel that really saved us a lot of headaches, a lot of just not good things that could have happened between CHL and AHL teams. But not only that, it gave these players an opportunity to play in the AHL right out of the gates.
Mm-hmm.
It gave them a chance because there's a lot of great players. We have 1,000 guys, 1,500. You have 510 players in the NHL, and we have over 2,000 signed up. There's 1,500 players out there, and there's only 510 roster spots in the AHL. So the talent. There's still going to be some guys that have been overlooked. So
Right.
what I'm going to say to GMs is check your training camp rosters. But the talent in the AHL is going to be fantastic this year, and I can't wait to get it started.
Jonathan, isn't that kind of the how this works out? Mike mentioned that. Isn't that kind of how it's that way in hockey? You've got the minor league teams who have to deal with this every day, and so it's only natural that the GM and the AGMs have to struggle with the same kind of thing. And I think that's what's so great about LG is that it's very realistic to what you wind up having to do if you're managing a minor league team.
Absolutely. As an AHL team, we're kind of, I'm going to use a word that I don't necessarily mean, but I can't think of a better one to use, but you're kind of in purgatory in the AHL because you'll hear me out. You'll hear what I mean. So as the AHL team, you've got a training camp full of players after you're through the bidding process that are playing in the CHL. And you may have to call somebody up as an ECUer to play or for whatever reason. But on the flip side of that, we are also the feeder league to the NHL. So at any time, there are players that are everyday players for us. You know, they play 3 games a week, and we plan on having them all season. That could get called up full time to the NHL at any point. And so we've always got to keep on our toes and playing those guys on our training camp and keeping an eye on the league to make sure that we have somebody who can jump right into that spot and continue to play without skipping a beat. I mean, that's why it's so fun here, because you never know what's going to happen. Just when you think that you're sitting here pretty with a good team and everything's perfect, I don't want to touch it. You know, someone has to leave the NHL team and they got to call somebody up, and now you're scrambling to fill a spot for a game on Tuesday night. So it's, you know, it's definitely something that's really neat to see and can be difficult, but when you sit back and look at it, it is definitely an enjoyable experience.
Well, I think you know, we just to wrap up season two in general, I think we have tremendous amount of obviously tremendous amount of interest by players. Good thing for the league just to have that kind of interest, but is it going to be more difficult to manage your team now? Last season you had nobody else to worry about except you know, whether or not you might get your players called up to the pros. With the CHL involved, with so many more players involved, as good as it is overall for LG, is it? I'm assuming it's got to be tougher for the management.
Um, I think we have a good plan in place with our management group here, from top to bottom, from ownership in Washington down to us. So, I don't know. That's tough to answer. It's far more organized this year, I feel, because we've been through it for a year, and I'm sure there's a lot of GMs out there that feel the same way as Vihai and I. It's we've been through it, we've gotten our feet wet with it. Last year it was very overwhelming, I think, and now that we know what to expect, you know, there's definitely more of a comfortability there, far more comfortable. So I wouldn't necessarily say it may be more challenging, but it's going to be fun. This is fun. We're getting into the good stuff here, folks, and the season is about to start. And you know, bring your lunch pails. It's time to go to work.
Yeah, it may be a little more challenging if you just look at it by itself this year, but at the same time, probably not, because we're more prepared. We've been through it once.
Right.
So you're right, Miranaconda. That's a tough question to answer at this point. I guess we're just going to have to see it play out. But one of the big things that we've seen through the bidding process, going back to that for just a second, we've seen players that have been bid on that got enormous deals, and it's one of those things that makes me think about the salary cap. And there was one other thing I wanted to bring up about the AHL. We have a smaller salary cap than the NHL, and that is something when we're going through the bidding process that we have to keep in mind. And there are definitely players that I'm sure teams missed out on, that they wanted because other teams had different plans for bidding and were able to bid on people, and that alone will cause players to get spread throughout this league and cause the competition level league wide to be spread out instead of concentrated onto one or two rosters.
Well, I think obviously you guys have stated it pretty well from the management side, but let's try and get to the last segment here of the season two preview. This is the LGAHL this week. T Sibs, V High, and Marina Conda with you as we get to the last part of our show here, which is just to talk more about the teams this season in the AHL and who's doing what. You know, just on the glance of the rosters, I saw a couple of teams that I find pretty interesting. I think the Checkers are going to come right back this year and be again very competitive. Yeah, I've played with a lot of these guys. Lannister Bro, NHL Baby Girl was on our team last year. On defense, Can Sub, Angry Dangler, Elevator, all really good defenders that I like and would have loved to have had on our team too. And then in the end, Tyler Lowkey, Cosmo as the goaltenders. Again, a really strong team. I like them to do well this year, and I also looked at the Bakersville Condors, and again, uh, Broski just saying, guys like that on the team who are experienced, who have shown that they play well within this system of leagues, and those are a couple of teams that jumped out on me right away. Now, let's start with you, Maranaconda. Looking at some of these teams and the makeup of them in the AHL, of course, we're keeping the Hershey Bears out of this. Let's not be biased at all and just talk about everybody else.
Yep.
Let's talk about some of the teams or that you're seeing that might jump out at you as being right away before the season starts pretty well equipped.
Well, I always have to go right to the Chicago Wolves. I think Vibes does a fantastic job over there as a general manager, and this year he's got Jim along with him. They have a great management group over there, and they always ice a very, very competitive team, very, very good team. They've got players like Sassman, who's a fantastic winger. They've got Lag Tacos, who is a shutdown D-man. They have a lot of great players over there, and it looks like Vibes is putting together another winning team over there in Chicago. And then I would also have to go with the Checkers in the Western Conference. I do think they have some strong forwards up in there. Their defensive core is very solid. Cosmo is a fantastic goaltender. It's going to be interesting to see what those teams do. And then, I guess I'm kind of biased to the Western Conference for some reason, although we're in the Eastern Conference. But, I really, I think the Manitoba Moose might come out of nowhere this year. I think Sabres is a great GM. He's a great guy. Chicken and Biscuit is a fantastic player who's the AGM over there. I think they might make some noise over in the Western Conference and stir the pot a little. But it's going to be great to watch. There's a lot of new managers in the league.
Right.
There's a lot of management teams that switched teams, So there's a lot of guys that are familiar. There are, I think the Binghamton Senators are another team to look out for to go to the Eastern Conference. Barris is a great player himself. Liv by Sin is a fantastic player who was on the Providence Bruins last year. So he obviously knows how to win. It's going to be fun to watch it unfold this year. It really is. I like a lot of these teams. It seems like the talent is really widespread this year. So there's going to be, any team can win on any night. Doesn't matter what line you're playing, look out because, it's going to be an exciting season.
Jonathan, your thoughts on any of the teams that stand out to you?
Yeah, as I go through the rosters looking at different teams, the one that kind of sticks out to me that might be a solid team and a tough team to play against is the Lake Erie Monsters this year. They're run by
agree.
Devil's Pride and Curlew, but they've got Dead Soul Rising, who was he was in the All-Star voting last year in the league as a top scoring left winger, and they also have a D-man, DJ WKU 68, and they're both high players in this league, and this is a team that I think is one we're going to need to watch out for. And I also, after last season, even though there's change in management on a lot of these teams with guys going up to the NHL to become owners or just switching organizations or whatever it may be, there's some rivalries that kicked up at the end of last season, especially in the playoffs. I'm sure that the Providence Bruins are going to want to get some revenge on the Wolfpack, and watching things like that play out this year is going to be extremely fun to see.
Yeah, there are a couple of other teams to note, and I got to say, before I talk about any specific team, if you look over the rosters, and here's part of my bias as a goaltender, I look over the rosters, and I don't know if it's because I know players more this season, but I see a lot of good goaltending, and I know there was a struggle last year to get decent, you know, get a good tandem going on a team. It could be a problem until you really got to know your training camp guys, but I'm looking at the goaltending on a lot of these teams. San Jose is one of the teams I look at who have a lot of great players. Flesh Eating Alien, JMM 420, Ducks fan Waterloo. I mean, just M Sibs is on there, and I like Sibs. He's a great D. I Seahawk. And then they've got Perkins Pancake House and Matt Bielski as their goaltenders, and that's a hell of a tandem. I mean, I think that's a pretty solid team, and I think a lot of these teams, as I look at their goaltenders, they've got good goalies now. There is plenty of them. You don't have to necessarily switch over. As a matter of fact, we lost a couple of the better goaltenders for this season, not just because they went to the
Uh,
NHL, but because they switched positions.
Aha, but we didn't lose the best goaltender in the league last year, who was Mooner 2014,
Yeah.
who is still on the rampage and now the GM of that team. They're going to be a very solid team as well. Mooner is the best goalie in the AHL, if you ask me. He is fantastic. He stops everything that comes at him. General McBoozy is a great defenseman,
Yep.
shutdown defenseman, but also moves the puck. It looks like they just made a move to pick up Lions as well.
Oh
So they
wow.
could be making some serious noise over there in San Antonio.
And Jonathan, I think Mike just mentioned it. You know, a guy like Mooner who was tremendous. 30, 18, and 5. His record in 53 games. He played the most games of any goaltender. Goals against at 2.6. A guy like that could very easily be in the NHL, but he did a very selfless thing and took a management job in the AHL to stay there. And I think not only quality wise do you want a guy like this on your team, but just as a player, as a guy who wants to be management and wants to stay there so he can run a team. Instead of doing something selfish, he did it for the league. I think that's the kind of guy anybody wants on their team.
He is the AHL's reigning uh, Vesna, or the equivalent AHL award winner. Remember that as well.
Yeah, I think it's a privilege and an honor to be called a GM alongside the rest of these AHL GMs, and I have a high respect for anybody that's willing to run an organization, but especially these AHL organizations. Because there are guys that had opportunities to go up to the NHL that wanted to see this league continue to grow and stayed in the AHL to make that happen. And I think you see that in a lot of different cases, especially with, well, we're back for another season here, but there's guys who were AHL GMs last year that aren't AHL GMs for their same team, but are still AHL GMs in a different organization. And that can only mean good things for the future of this league.
Well, we're getting towards the end here, and we want to wrap up. Again, this is the LGAHL this week, the season 2 preview. T Sibs, V High, and Marina Conda with you. And as we wrap up, I guess this sounds like almost like a Miss America contest type question, but what for season 2? Yeah, for season 2, after what we've just experienced, you know, what are your hopes and dreams for the perfect season coming out of this? What would you like to see happen overall for the league that would make it again another success and would really show to you that we're going in the right direction with all of this?
Well, for me, first off, it would be the Hershey Bears winning the. Oh, just kidding. No, but seriously, I think the more people get involved, the better this league's going to be. The more it'll grow. I'd really like to see every team really do their best to get to the section where it lets you know how to link your Twitch to this site, and put your games up on the website. Get people interested.
Right.
We're going to be having games of the week this year. We want people watching these games if they're not playing. We really want people to get involved. Get your Twitch accounts linked to the site. There are directions on how to do that. I believe there's actually YouTube videos that they have posted as well that let you know how to do that. So please get out there. Stream all of your games. Stream your games so people can watch. Create a buzz. Let's get this thing going. And I'm very much looking forward to season 2, and I think it's going to be. We're going to knock it out of the park. I really have a lot of high hopes for this season. There's going to be some great competition, and just keep pushing forward. Let's get it going. I'm excited.
Vihai, what's other than the fact of having Maranaconda drive you nuts for a season as little as possible, what are you looking for in season 2?
Well, in season 2, I'm really hoping that teams get off the ground running. They have a big job to get these teams prepared to go, because we're only 7 hours away from the start of the season. But what I would like to see is competition to be such that when we're getting down to the last 20, 25 games of the season, that we've got a lot of teams in this playoff race, and every single game you'll find is extremely meaningful, not only to whether or not you're going to make the playoffs, but what position or what seed you might be once you get there. And that's one of the most exciting things that I remember from last year, and I think this year it's going to be even better. So, that's probably the number one thing that I want to see is, I don't want it to be 8 runaway teams from each conference. I would like it to be where almost every team, and if not every team, most of them in each conference is fighting for their playoff lives the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season. And that will make it well. Right. That's why you start off and continue to grow. But if it can maintain that, and we're coming down to the wire, and we've got a lot of teams fighting for position, it's going to be really interesting to see. And one last thing on the Twitch, I linked my Twitch account to the site last year, and the only thing I didn't realize how to make the site pull my Twitch feed so you could see it through the site is when you're on the LGAHL website page and you go down to the chat box, there's a little purple square button that's the Twitch button. Once you start your broadcast, you just press that purple button as long as your Twitch is linked to the site, and it will say stream started. If it says, wait a few seconds and try again, do it again. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times. But press that button and it will immediately link your Twitch to the site, and your games will be streaming through the website and the app for live scoring.
All right, well, gentlemen, listen, we'll be on this game in a matter of seconds after we're done with this, but practicing for tonight's opening night. But listen, obviously, good luck to you and good luck to everybody else out there. But we will be doing this every week, so everyone knows, and we'll be doing sort of a recap of what happened in the week of games and some of the top performers. And so stay tuned for everybody else. But I just want to thank you guys for joining me today, and let's get the ball rolling on this show.
Sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah, thank you very much, both of you guys. This was a blast. And if anybody out there has any questions or suggestions on topics you may want to hear throughout the season, please feel free to let us know. The more involvement we can get, the greater this will be.
That's Vihai and Maranaconda. I'm T. Sibbs. This has been the LGAHL This Week, the Season 2 preview. Good luck to everyone as Season 2 starts in the LGAHL PlayStation Network.